Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy thinks it has become harder for Ukraine to negotiate with Russia since Kiev became aware of the scale of atrocities they believe were carried out by Russian troops in Ukraine. Zelenskyy spoke on national television from the town of Bucha in the Kiev region, where tied bodies shot at close range, a mass grave and other signs of executions have been found in the territory retaken from the Russian troops.
Я скажу вам, что чем дольше будет Российская Федерация затягивать процесс.
I will tell you the following. The longer the Russian Federation drags on with the meeting, the worse it will be for them, as well as for this situation and for this war. Because each day when our troops advance and deoccupy territories, you can see what is happening. It is very difficult to talk when you see what they did here. Every day we find people in barrels, cellars, and where else. Some strangled, some clearly tortured. So I believe they need to think faster. That is, if they have something to think with.
Ежедневно, понимаете, там находятся люди в бочках, в погребах и так далее, задушенные, військові злочини, і це буде визнано світом як геноцид.
These are war crimes and they will be recognized by the world as genocide. You are here today and can see what happened. We know of thousands of people killed and tortured with severed limbs, raped women, murdered children. I think it is more than this is a genocide.
Зґвалтовані жінки, вбиті діти, я думаю, що це більше, ніж не можемо надати можливість говорити про те, що
We cannot give them a single chance to say that Europe or the world lacks something to punish the criminals this time. I do not consider such a scenario. We will not let it happen. It is not about alliances. It is about life itself and the people who were killed and tortured. And there are millions of pieces of evidence of that. This is why all of these words, let's wait, there will be a court hearing, but it will be very slow. We will apply pressure publicly as much as possible. We will not allow any pauses in finding all those criminals.
Ми будемо тиснути максимально публічно, як тільки ми можемо. Я считаю, что то, что происходит, это именно
Russia denies targeting civilians since invading Ukraine on 24th of February in what it calls a special military operation aimed at demilitarizing and denazifying Ukraine. Ukraine says that it was invaded without provocation. The destruction and civilian deaths in Bucha look set to galvanize the United States and Europe into additional sanctions against Moscow, with officials raising the prospect of restrictions on Russia's energy exports.
Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has called for the immediate establishment of an international commission to investigate genocidal crimes committed by the Russians in Ukraine. He has also demanded that the European Union impose tough sanctions on Russia. In turn, Joe Biden's administration is collecting full documentation on the crimes committed by Russian forces in Ukraine.
The head of government has called on European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to convene the European Council as soon as possible. Morawiecki wants the assets of Russian oligarchs to be confiscated. Clear, strong sanctions are needed. The sanctions we have imposed so far are not working. I have been saying this loudly for many days. President Macron, how many times have you negotiated with Putin and what have you achieved? Chancellor Scholz, it is not the voices of German businesses, German billionaires who are now probably holding you back from your next actions that should be heard loudly in Berlin today. It is the voice of those innocent women and children, the voice of those murders that should be heard by all Germans. Morawiecki proposes an international commission of inquiry to investigate the crime of genocide in Ukraine. The crime of genocide must be judged. It must be properly documented and described, judged. Foreign Minister and envoy of the Prime Minister of Japan, Yoshimasa Hayashi, is visiting Poland. He was received by President Andrzej Duda, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki and Foreign Minister Zbigniew Rau. The subject of the talks was Russian aggression against Ukraine. We value Tokyo's continuing support for continuing efforts to stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the growing material and humanitarian support flowing from Japan to both Kiev and Warsaw. I am deeply shocked by the news that there have been extremely cruel acts of violence against civilians near Kiev. The murder of innocent civilians is a violation of international humanitarian law and is unacceptable. I strongly condemn these actions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy ironically invited former German and French leaders Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy to see for themselves what 14 years of appeasement of Russia has led to. As DPA reported, Merkel stands by her decision not to admit Ukraine to NATO, but supports international efforts to end Russian aggression in Ukraine. The news of the crimes committed by the Russians in Bucha has provoked a reaction from the media and countries around the world. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced that the Americans are documenting the crimes committed against civilians in Ukraine. We strongly condemn the acts of atrocities committed by Russian troops in Bucha and elsewhere in Ukraine. We seek accountability for the perpetrators of these acts. French President Emmanuel Macron said he supports the introduction of another package of sanctions, including those that would target Russian oil and coal. He added that decisions should be taken together with European allies, above all Germany. Today we have very clear indications that the war crimes have taken place. It is more or less established that the Russian army is responsible for them. What happened in Bucha requires a new package of sanctions and very clear measures. Germany has declared that the Russians will feel a new sanctions package. It would concern the blockade of Russian gas supplies. The murder of civilians is a war crime, and we must relentlessly investigate the crimes committed by the Russian armed forces. In the coming days, we will decide with our allies on further sanctions. Professor Henryk Domański believes that the graphic pictures of the bodies from Bucha, although shocking, cannot necessarily move the conscience of Western European countries. The only such factor would be an increase in the threat from Russia to Western countries, NATO countries, but I don't think the average Frenchman or Italian believes the Russians will be willing to take such action. Ukraine is appealing to the International Court in The Hague and international organizations to send a mission to towns near Kiev, including Bucha, to collect evidence of Russian crimes against civilians.
Viktor Orban will become Prime Minister of Hungary for a fourth term. After a recount of almost 99% of the votes, the coalition of Fidesz and Christian Democratic People's Party won 135 seats in the 199-seat parliament, thus achieving a constitutional majority.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban looked set for a fourth consecutive win in Sunday's election as voters shrugged off concerns over Budapest's close ties with Moscow. Declaring victory in front of a cheering crowd at the headquarters of his Fidesz party, Orban said the party's win was so big it could be seen from the moon, but definitely from Brussels. Fidesz supporters were jubilant as results came in, and during Orban's address, breaking out into chants several times as he spoke. We have scored a victory so big that it can be seen even from the moon, but definitely from Brussels. We have to ask the dear Lord how it happened that we won the biggest victory when everyone joined forces against us. Huge international power centres and organisations have moved against us, so we have to send them a message too. A few nice words. We can tell them that it was money thrown out of the window, what they have given to the Hungarian left, and perhaps you will allow me to say that the Hungarian left was the worst investment of Uncle George, as it has only been draining money for the last 12 years. Russia's 24th of February invasion of Ukraine had appeared to upend Orban's campaign in recent weeks, forcing him into awkward manoeuvring to explain cosy business relations with President Vladimir Putin. Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said on Monday that sanctions on Russia are blocked by Germany, not Hungary. Morawiecki said the outcome of the election should be respected and said Germany and other major countries were afraid of the economic fallout of sanctioning Russia more harshly. Democratic elections must be respected. All those who do not say exactly what the situation is in Europe should not be distracted by Hungary. In Europe, ladies and gentlemen, the situation is very simple. This can be seen at the European Council. Everyone who reads the transcripts, also the journalists from TVN, will clearly see that Germany is the main brake on very strong sanctions. Prime Minister Viktor Orban did not stop the sanctions, and in fact, the main obstacles are big countries, those that are afraid for their businesses. Orban's usually friendly relations with Poland have been strained by his cautious stance on the Ukraine war after a decade of close business ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.